It's been nearly 2 months since 4-year-old Gus Lamont was reported missing from that remote South Australian farm on September 27, 2025, and after exhaustive searches turning up nothing. It's high time we start thinking about arrests. Coincidentally, we've got prime suspects right there, the Lamont family, with all their odd behaviors and red flags staring us in the face. Yet, it seems in release haven't fully checked them out, ignoring those glaring signs. But hold on. There are specific clues pointing to an arrest brewing soon. So, what if the net is closing in? Could we see handcuffs on someone close to home any day now? There is no arrest. Up to now, there have been no major updates on the disappearance of Gus Lamont. However, if we pay close attention to recent developments, we can imagine some specific signs proving that an arrest will occur targeting the Lamont family members. Let's start with the search process, where repeated failures in surrounding areas have led to a method of elimination, increasingly focusing on the Lamont home. The third search phase, wrapping up at the end of October 2025, involved draining 3.2 million liters of water from a dam just 600 meters from the house, but turned up no trace of Gus. Police applied this elimination tactic to rule out peripheral zones, paving the way for a potential fourth search back at Oak Park Station, the grandparents' homestead, based on additional data analysis from Commissioner Grant Stevens. This isn't just routine. In many investigations, when outer searches yield nothing, authorities circle back to the origin point, often escalating to forensic scrutiny of the residence itself. The second search ended on October 17, 2025, covering 470 square kilometers around the station with infrared drones, local trackers, yet no footprints or scent trails emerged, eliminating far-wandering theories and redirecting attention to the immediate vicinity of the Lamont property. Private investigator Ken Gamble cited early police missteps in not adapting their approach, which failed to uncover clues in the vast dusty terrain. This reinforces the elimination method, honing in on areas close to the home, where initial assumptions might have overlooked something. Indigenous trackers and former detectives have called the case counterintuitive. Given the open landscape with few hiding spots and no signs of scavenger birds or other traces, they believe Gus could still be near the station, prompting a return to eliminate outer possibilities and zero in on the Lamont house. In a standard case, this progression, nearly 2 months in, signals that procedural steps like warrant applications for deeper home inspections are nearing completion, potentially setting the stage for arrests if anomalies surface. Turning to family behaviors that stand out as potential indicators of guilt. Differing sharply from how most families react to a child's disappearance, we see patterns that raise red flags. The Lamonts refused outside volunteers, allowing only police onto the property. Media reports note this, though authorities treat it as a privacy right rather than criminal evidence. In countless cases, however, such isolation fuels suspicion, as cooperating families typically welcome all help to find their child. And this reluctance can prompt investigators to probe deeper, leading to charges once other leads dry up. The incident with Josie holding a firearm toward a Daily Mail reporter, brandishing it while shouting "Get out," and threatening to call police, stands out as confrontational, labeled a misunderstanding by officials who said Josie spotted a snake. But it contrasts with the usual demeanor of distraught families who engage media for publicity. This kind of defensiveness, often in investigations, where after weeks of no progress, it could justify subpoenas or arrests to compel cooperation. Joshua Lamont, Gus's father, learned of the disappearance through police rather than directly from the family. Internal conflicts exist, with Joshua living separately and preparing a new home for Jess and their younger son Ronnie amid long-standing disputes. Such family rifts, documented in reports, mirror dynamics in other probes where withheld information points to culpability, and with time passing, police might view this as motive or cover-up, accelerating toward formal accusations. Shannon, the grandmother, was the last to see Gus at 5:00 p.m., calling him at 5:30 p.m. only to find him gone. Described as shy and deferring to Josie, her role lacks confirmed oddities. But in routine cases, being the last witness invites intense questioning that can evolve into suspicion if inconsistencies arise. Community rumors amplify these behaviors, suggesting they reveal a controlling household dynamic that deviates from expected grief responses. Josie's actions in the reporter confrontation, choosing to escalate rather than let the situation diffuse, hint at a need to assert dominance on the property, a trait that whispers of hidden tensions. Speculation swirls that this reveals underlying issues, especially since families in similar situations usually seek widespread support rather than isolation. The family's overall silence. Limited public appearances, no recent photos of Jess or Ronnie, fuels doubts, drawing parallels to cases where media scrutiny uncovers secrets, though authorities haven't acted yet. Historical military ties in the family might foster local police connections, potentially delaying but not preventing escalation, and vague mentions of a dark secret haunting them add layers of intrigue without specifics. In everyday investigations, these elements compile over time, and at nearly 2 months, they often culminate in arrests as patience for voluntary cooperation wanes. The participating forces offer another layer, potentially proving pivotal in building a case. Task Force Horizon leads, involving the Australian Defence Force, state emergency service volunteers, local trackers, and landowners in searches, while no special forensics units or child protection agencies, like the Department for Child Protection, are confirmed for proving family crimes. Their absence doesn't preclude future involvement. Private investigator Ken Gamble and Indigenous trackers analyze terrain anomalies without directly implicating the family. But police commitment closure suggests readiness to pivot if needed. No child welfare engagement is noted, as the case remains a disappearance, not mistreatment related. Rumors from online discussions propose that forensics teams might join a fourth search to examine the Lamont home, based on outer eliminations, though nothing concrete supports this yet. A psychic social media claims of agencies hiding something sinister, possibly tied to child protection or foster care, lack proof but echo public unease. In typical scenarios, these multi-agency efforts, after exhaustive external checks, shift to internal family scrutiny, and with the timeline advancing, procedural hurdles like evidence reviews are likely wrapping up, positioning for potential arrests. Delving deeper into the stories tied to these signs, consider the full account of the dam search authorities drained the reservoir, located close to the home, in late October, employing heavy equipment and divers, yet found no remains or items linked to Gus, effectively crossing off drowning as a lone possibility and redirecting to the property itself. This mirrors processes in other disappearances where water bodies are cleared first. Then homes become focal points, often revealing foul play. The vast search radius in earlier phases, spanning hundreds of kilometers with support, uncovered nothing, underscoring the illogical nature of a child vanishing without trace in flat terrain, a point experts hammer home, suggesting something more contained, like an accident or incident at the station. Josie's full encounter with the reporter unfolded dramatic. The journalist approached. Shannon tried to de-escalate by noting they were leaving. But Josie advanced with the gun, insisting on prior warnings despite the reporter's denial of previous visits. Officials downplayed it as snake-related, but the audio captures threats and agitation, a narrative that in investigations can evolve from minor to indicative of volatility, prompting warrants. Joshua's situation tells a tale of division, separated from the grandparents' home due to disputes. He was building a family unit elsewhere, only to face this tragedy indirectly notified. A detail that investigators might dissect for timelines or withheld facts, common precursors to charges in family-involved cases. Shannon's timeline adds nuance. She saw Gus playing in sand at 5:00 p.m., returned half an hour later to an empty scene, triggering the alert. Her reserved nature, yielding control to Josie, fits a household where decisions are centralized, but in probes, this can imply uneven accountability, leading to individual interrogations that uncover cracks. The family's refusal of volunteers stemmed from privacy concerns, per reports, yet it isolated them. A move that in standard protocols invites closer monitoring and, over time, legal pressure to open up. The property's features, like the sand pile as an active construction zone with tools nearby and a rear quarry area, where earth was moved, invite speculation of overlooked hazards or deliberate acts, elements that forensics could target in an intensified search. Dogs on the property raise questions too. If present during the disappearance, why no accompaniment like in comparable U.S. cases where farm dogs stayed with wandering kids? This absence suggests not a simple wander-off, pushing theories toward family involvement. Maternal angles emerge vaguely. Jess, described as a gifted introvert, has sparse visibility, with old photos only, fueling notions of detachment or hidden dynamics. Comparisons to historical Australian cases, where families face suspicion after fruitless searches, illustrate how these signs build. Initial sympathy shifts as evidence stalls, leading to breakthroughs via re-examinations. With nearly 2 months elapsed, the investigative machinery, data reviews, witness re-interviews, nears a tipping point where, in normal proceedings, arrests follow if patterns align with concealment or negligence. The grief support surrounding the family contrasts with these undercurrents, but even that can mask deeper issues until probed. Psychic inputs, though unverified, claim broader agency cover-ups, tying to welfare systems a thread that in real cases sometimes uncovers prior interventions, accelerating toward resolutions. Overall, these accumulating details, from search pivots to behavioral outliers, paint a trajectory where, in a conventional true crime arc, the net tightens on the family, with procedural timelines suggesting imminent action as external options exhaust. The reasonable delay. As we have analyzed, there are many signs indicating that there will be an arrest. However, when will it happen, and why is the police still maintaining a sluggish attitude with their actions? In digging deeper into this case, we find that rumors about the family's military history play a role in explaining the delay. Speculation has circulated that the Lamont family, particularly Josie Lamont, has a background tied to military service, which might create connections with local law enforcement. This could influence how the investigation unfolds, potentially leading to a more cautious approach from authorities. For instance, reports suggest that a patriarch in the family was scarred by the horrors of war, implying a history of service that might foster long-standing ties with police in rural areas like South Australia. Such rumors imply that these relationships could result in preferential treatment, slowing down any move toward arrests even amid public suspicion. Community discussions have amplified this, pointing to Josie's past as a possible reason why police defended the family during the shotgun incident, framing it as a misunderstanding rather than escalating it. Without concrete evidence, these whispers persist, suggesting that historical bonds might be shielding the family from immediate scrutiny, though officials have not confirmed any bias. Beyond these rumors, the South Australian police have emphasized that the case remains an active missing person investigation, with no evidence of foul play uncovered so far. This stance requires them to explore every possible scenario before shifting focus to potential suspects within the family. Among the alternatives under consideration are accidents, such as Gus wandering off and succumbing to the harsh outback environment, or encounters with wildlife that could explain the lack of traces. Private investigators involved in similar cases have stressed that the outback's unpredictable terrain introduces numerous factors, like sudden weather changes or animal interference, that must be ruled out through exhaustive searches. For example, experts have noted the possibility of Gus being attacked by wild animals, which would leave minimal evidence in such a vast, arid landscape. Another angle includes involvement from outsiders, perhaps a stranger passing through the remote area, demanding broad inquiries to eliminate these before narrowing in on family members. This methodical process ensures nothing is overlooked, as rushing to arrests without disproving other theories could compromise the entire probe. We also see that police priorities center on locating Gus first, given the urgency of saving a young child's life, before pursuing any leads that might point to wrongdoing. At just 4 years old, Gus represents a high-stakes situation where every hour counts in a potential rescue operation. Authorities have committed to providing closure for the family by exhausting search efforts, recognizing that the golden hour for rescue extends in remote settings due to survival possibilities in sheltered spots. This focus on recovery means delaying any criminal pivot, as diverting resources to build a case against suspects could mean missing a window to find Gus alive. If suspicions do arise later, arrests would only follow once searches yield no results and solid proof emerges, to avoid derailing the primary goal of safeguarding the child's welfare. The emphasis here is on life preservation, with police underscoring that assuming foul play too soon might abandon hope for a positive outcome. Adding to this complexity is the parallel disappearance of Benjamin, a 40-year-old man last seen on September 26, 2025, just a day before Gus vanished. His blue 2006 Hyundai Getz, bearing Western Australia registration plates, was found abandoned near Yunta in South Australia's far north, with footprints leading the surrounding bush but no signs of other vehicles or additional tracks. Benjamin, described as Caucasian, about 180 cm tall, and of medium build, was traveling along the Stuart Highway between Glendambo and Pimba around 5 p.m. that day, prompting concerns for his welfare. While there's no direct evidence linking the two cases, their proximity in time and location, both in the remote outback near Yunta, forces police to consider overlapping possibilities, such as a shared abductor or coincidental environmental hazards in the region. Rumors have swirled that Benjamin's vehicle was hidden in the bush, with limited details released about his full name or background, and no joint searches conducted with Gus's case, highlighting the array of scenarios authorities must navigate. This incident underscores how the outback generates multiple unexplained vanishings, compelling investigators to weigh broad contingencies to prevent hasty conclusions about suspects in Gus's disappearance. The risks of prioritizing arrests over searches become evident when examining past cases where such a shift led to devastating consequences. Take the disappearance of Madeleine McCann in 2007, a 3-year-old British girl who vanished from her family's holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, Portugal, while her parents dined at a nearby restaurant. The Portuguese Judicial Police, known as PJ, initially treated it as a missing child case, but quickly pivoted to suspecting her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, based on ambiguous evidence from their rental car, and theories that Madeleine had died accidentally in the apartment, with the parents then concealing her remains. By September 2007, just 4 months in, the McCanns were named arguidos, or formal suspects, amid intense media scrutiny that painted them as culpable. This focus drained resources from broader searches for a possible abductor, despite eyewitness accounts of a man carrying a child toward the beach that night. The PJ's lead investigator, Gonzalo Amaral, pushed the accident theory aggressively, even publishing a book later alleging the parents' involvement. But internal reviews criticized the haste in targeting them without ironclad proof. As a result, international cooperation stalled, with British authorities clashing over the direction, and the case suffered from fragmented efforts. Amaral was removed from the investigation in October 2007 after criticizing UK police, and the PJ's director resigned amid admissions of procedural errors. By July 2008, the McCanns were cleared as arguidos due to insufficient evidence, but the early fixation on them meant lost time in pursuing leads like sightings of Madeleine in other countries or connections to known child traffickers. Operation Grange, launched by Scotland Yard in 2011, later identified a German suspect, Christian Bruckner, in 2020, suggesting the initial abductor theory might have been correct all along. Critics, including former detectives, argued that the rush to blame the parents overshadowed forensic work on the apartment and delayed analysis of phone records that could have traced movements. Over 18 years, the case has cost millions, with no resolution, and some experts believe prioritizing a live search from the start, mobilizing more divers, dogs, and aerial surveillance, might have increased chances of recovery. The media frenzy amplified the fallout, turning public opinion against the McCanns and pressuring investigators into defensive postures rather than proactive hunts. This example illustrates how prematurely centering on family suspects can fracture investigations, erode trust, and ultimately hinder justice for the missing child. In our examination of the Lamont case, these patterns resonate, as police maintain a deliberate pace to avoid similar pitfalls. The absence of arrest stems from a calculated strategy to exhaust all avenues, ensuring that any future charges stand on unassailable ground. Rumors of military ties add another layer, potentially explaining the perceived leniency, though unsubstantiated. With Benjamin's case mirroring the unpredictability of outback disappearances, authorities face a web of possibilities that demand thorough vetting. The urgency to find Gus alive overrides suspicions, reflecting lessons from cases like McCann's, where haste proved counterproductive. We continue to track how these elements interplay, as the investigation evolves without rushing to conclusions. The silence of One thing that's very noticeable in this case is the scarcity of information, which doesn't fit with an urgent case like this, raising questions about whether the police are trying to hide information or not. In the disappearance of 4-year-old Gus Lamont from the remote Oak Park station in South Australia's outback on September 27, 2025, the South Australian Police, or SAPOL, have faced scrutiny for how they've managed details. From confirmed reports, SAPOL has actively debunked certain misinformation spreading online, such as an image of a strange man holding a child with curly blonde hair that some claimed was Gus. They confirmed it was fabricated and unrelated to the case, showing an effort to control the narrative and prevent confusion. However, outlets like AFP Fact Check have pointed out that their initial silence on key details allowed rumors to proliferate unchecked, suggesting a deliberate withholding that might fuel speculation rather than quell it. This approach raises eyebrows because in a high-stakes missing child investigation, transparency could mobilize public help, yet the police seem selective in what they release. Another confirmed aspect is Sapoel's reluctance to share recent photos of Gus or family members like his mother Jess and brother Ronnie. Only older, tightly cropped images from what appears to be a play school setting have been made public, as noted in reports from Now to Love and Daily Mail. The police justify this by citing privacy protections. But critics argue it hampers public assistance in spotting the child, especially in a vast rural area where sightings could be crucial. This limited disclosure echoes a pattern where essential visual aids are restricted, potentially delaying leads while the search drags on. We see this in how the police have handled the multiple search phases. The first 3 waves ended without new findings, and by October 17, 2025, they shifted to a recovery mode, implying a grim outlook but without elaborating on the evidence prompting that change. Commissioner Grant Stevens has spoken vaguely about data analysis, guiding a possible 4th search, as covered in the New Daily and BBC, yet no specifics on what that data entails have been shared, leaving the public and media to piece together fragments. Similarly, when media highlighted mysterious kangaroo footprints as a potential clue, Sapoel dismissed them as false leads but withheld full forensic reports on the terrain, according to MSN and NZ Herald, further stoking doubts about what's being kept under wraps. Community suspicions run deeper, with online discussions questioning if Sapoel is concealing a dark secret tied to the family, as hinted in Daily Mail coverage. The lack of details on internal family conflicts between Gus's father Joshua and grandfather Josie, or the reasons behind the family's refusal of volunteer searchers, has sparked theories of third-party involvement or kidnapping. These gaps in official accounts have led to widespread conjecture that the police are managing the story to shield certain elements, even if no hard proof exists. Some point to the absence of full disclosures on psychic inputs or expert views, like those from indigenous trackers, suggesting a controlled narrative to avert public panic. In the shotgun incident where Josie confronted a Daily Mail reporter, Sapoel framed as a misunderstanding based on the family's snake story, despite video evidence showing the weapon being brandished, implying a protective stance that might obscure facts. Analyses from various sources also highlight Sapoel's delay in deploying drones from the start, contrasting with quicker uses in similar U.S. cases, and the non-disclosure of the farm dog's roles, hinting at hidden investigative missteps. A Facebook post described the case taking a darker turn, with a shift from abduction to foul theories, yet police silence on the rationale only amplifies these doubts. Comparing this to the handling of the Lily and Jack Sullivan disappearance in Nova Scotia, Canada, reveals striking parallels in police information control. In that case, 6-year-old Lily and 5-year-old Jack vanished from their home in Lansdowne on May 2, 2025, after family members couldn't locate them. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, initiated a missing persons probe but kept most details under lock and key from the outset. They released only basic information, such as descriptions of the children. Lily with her light brown hair and blue eyes, Jack with his blonde hair and hazel eyes, and the initial search area around their rural property. For months, the public heard little beyond assurances that the investigation was ongoing, with no elaboration on leads or forensic findings. This secrecy extended to the family's background. The children's mother, Malia Sullivan, and stepfather were thoroughly vetted, but RCMP waited till July 2025 to publicly state there was no criminal involvement, without detailing the evidence that cleared them. The case drew national attention when a $150,000 reward was offered through Nova Scotia's Rewards for Major Unsolved Crimes program. Yet even then, authorities shared minimal updates, focusing on the children's last known activities rather than active investigative paths. A volunteer search organized by the Ontario-based not-for-profit Please Bring Me Home on November 15, 2025, brought this opacity into sharper focus. Over 100 volunteers combed rough terrain along the Middle River in Pictou County, discovering items like a child's t-shirt, a blanket, and other clothing that initially sparked hope. However, RCMP quickly inspected these and declared them irrelevant to the disappearance, providing no further explanation on forensic tests or why they were dismissed. Search organizer Jimmy Rivard expressed frustration, calling the case strange due to the lack of traces after 6 months, and criticized the limited official involvement. noting police only observed from afar without joining the effort. This hands-off approach mirrored earlier phases, where RCMP conducted their own searches but shared scant results, such as ruling out abduction early on without evidence details. The children's remains have not been found, and while authorities haven't ruled out suspicious circumstances, they've maintained a tight lid on theories, including any environmental hazards in the wooded, river-adjacent area. In both the Gus Lamont and Sullivan cases, police forces exhibit similar restraint, dealing with child vanishings in isolated locales. Sapal, like RCMP, avoids full forensic disclosures, dismissing kangaroo tracks or drone data without reports, akin to RCMP rejecting volunteer-found items sans specifics. Both have debunked online falsehoods. Sapal refuted fake images of Gus, while RCMP dismissed unverified sightings of the Sullivans. Suspicions of cover-ups arise from perceived family ties. In Gus's case, the Lamont's military history might influence Sapal's leniency, paralleling RCMP's delayed clearance of the Sullivan family amid public doubts. The drip feed of information is a hallmark in these investigations. For the Sullivans, RCMP announced the November 15 search only post-event, confirming irrelevance without elaboration, much like Sapal's late October confirmation of no traces in the drained dam, months after Gus vanished. RCMP waited months to affirm no criminal links to the family, echoing Sapal's vague data analysis for a potential fourth search without metrics. In Gus's probe, updates on search endings come without new clues, similar to RCMP's July statement that the Sullivan investigation was intensive but ongoing, lacking direction. Police typically release baseline victim info, ages, appearances, timelines and locations, as RCMP did for Lily and Jack, and Sapal for Inch. Updates confirm completions and null results, like RCMP on volunteer items or Sapal on dam drainage. They debunk rumors publicly. RCMP on false witnesses, Sapal on kangaroo prints. Family status gets addressed sparingly, confirming no involvement without proof details. Handling rumors and criticisms shows defensiveness. RCM counters online speculation by stressing complications to probes, urging tips via hotlines, while facing backlash for perceived delays in family checks. Similarly, Sapal gets accused of bias due to family history, but maintains silence on specifics, redirecting to official channels. In the Sullivan case, organizers labeled it strange, yet RCMP avoided engaging theories. Much like Sapal with Gus's family dynamics, controlling information holds critical weight in such cases. It safeguards investigation integrity by not tipping off suspects or complicating leads with rumors, as both RCMP and Sapal withhold forensics to preserve evidence chains. It protects families and victims from harmful speculation and media pressure. RCMP shielded the Sullivan mother from undue scrutiny, akin to Sapal's privacy stance for the Lamonts. Preventing public panic is key. Drip feeding maintains hope and encourages cooperation without overwhelming details that could incite chaos in rural communities. Legally, it avoids tainting potential trials, vital in sensitive child cases where evidence must remain uncompromised. Yet this strategy invites criticism for opacity, as seen in both investigations where limited releases breed distrust and theories. Expanding on the Sullivan case for context, the siblings' disappearance unfolded in a quiet Nova Scotia community. On that May day, family reported them missing after they weren't found in their bedroom or yard. RCMP launched ground, air and water searches, involving drones and divers in nearby rivers, but scaled back after weeks without signs. Public appeals included Amber Alerts and posters, but details on home forensics or family interviews stayed sealed. By summer, focus shifted to long-term tips, with the reward announced to spur leads. The November volunteer push, covering overgrown areas, yielded items that briefly raised alarms, but RCMP's swift dismissal without transparency fueled online debates. Experts like retired officers have noted the eerie lack of traces, suggesting environmental factors or foul play, yet official silence persists. In Gus's situation, the outback setting amplifies similar issues. The boy's last sighting by his grandmother at 5 p.m., followed by her 5:30 p.m. check finding him gone, triggered immediate alerts. Sapal's army-assisted searches covered hundreds of square kilometers, including aerial sweeps and dam draining, but yielded nothing. The shift to recovery mode implied a fatality assumption, yet without shared rationale, it sparked questions. Family dynamics, like Joshua learning via police rather than relatives, remain undetailed officially, paralleling RCMP's handling of Sullivan family scrutiny. These patterns underscore how withholding can both aid and hinder. In Sullivan, the reward program aimed to counter stagnation, but limited info limited its impact. For Gus, vague expert inputs from trackers leave gaps. Ultimately, the scarcity breeds a cycle where public fills voids with conjecture, pressuring police to respond selectively while guarding the core probe. The dam drainage in Gus's case, emptying 3.2 million liters, was a major operation, yet post-event statements offered no insight into why that site was prioritized or what analysis ruled out traces. This mirrors RCMP's post-volunteer search comments, providing closure on items but not methodology. Such minimalism might stem from ongoing sensitivities, but it invites views of evasion. Family protections extend to not releasing recent images, a tactic in both cases to avoid exploitation, yet it restricts vigilance. For the Sullivans, outdated photos circulated, potentially missing current appearances after months. Gus's crop play school shot similarly limits utility. Debunking efforts, while necessary, highlight Control Sapowell's kangaroo print dismissal via press releases, not detailed briefs. RCMP similarly refuted sightings through statements, urging focus on facts. The importance lies in balancing secrecy with trust. Control prevents leaks that could alert perpetrators, as in hypothetical abductions. It shields grieving families from harassment, evident in Sullivan mother's low profile amid speculation. Panic aversion keeps communities calm, encouraging tips rather than vigilante actions. Legal adherence ensures evidence admissibility, crucial if cases turn criminal. Yet, criticisms persist. Delays in Sullivan family clearance fueled unfair suspicions, like Sapowell's perceived favoritism. Organizers, strange. Labels reflect frustration from info voids, paralleling Gus analysis questioning drone delays. In sum, these cases ate tight information reins as a double-edged sword, essential for method but risky for public confidence. The scarcity in Gus's updates, from photo limits to vague analyses, aligns with RCMP's approach, where basics dominate and depths remain hidden. This strategy, while often amplifies the very doubts it aims to suppress, leaving families and communities in prolonged limbo. The initial suspect. Moving to another, equally important factor. When it comes to arresting someone and investigating them. If the police want to arrest someone in the Lamont house, then of course they have been investigated. So has this process taken place or not, and what the police are doing? In cases like the disappearance of Gus Lamont, where a 4-year-old boy vanished from a remote outback station in South Australia on September 27, 2025, law enforcement often conducts discreet inquiries into family members without making it public right away. We see this pattern clearly in similar investigations, such as the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan in Nova Scotia, Canada. There, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, started scrutinizing the family from the very beginning, treating them as potential suspects while keeping the focus on searches and public appeals. The Sullivan siblings, 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack, went missing from their home in Lansdowne on May 2, 2025, after their mother, Malaya Sullivan, reported them absent from their bedroom. The RCMP launched an immediate response, deploying ground teams, drones, and endeavors in nearby rivers, but behind the scenes they were already zeroing in on the household. Malaya and her partner, Daniel Martel, who is the stepfather to the children, underwent thorough checks without any early public announcement that they were under suspicion. Daniel later recounted in interviews how, just 6 weeks after the kids disappeared, he was subjected to a polygraph test where investigators asked him point-blank, "Did you kill Lily and Jack?" This direct questioning showed how quickly the police turned their attention inward, even as they organized large-scale searches involving volunteers and specialized units. The approach allowed them to gather evidence quietly, avoiding tipping off anyone who might be involved and preventing media frenzy that could complicate things. Belinda Gray, the paternal grandmother of Lily and Jack and mother of their biological father Cody Sullivan, provided insight into this quiet focus during her CBC interview. She explained that she hadn't seen her grandchildren in nearly 2 years due to family dynamics, and she sensed from the start that the RCMP was owning in on the immediate family circle. While Gray didn't explicitly detail unannounced checks, her comments about the situation feeling off and her intuition that these babies are gone hinted at underlying tensions that police were probing discreetly. The RCMP confirmed their extensive scrutiny of Malaya and Daniel, including lie detector tests to rule out criminal involvement. But they only revealed this after months of investigation, concluding there was no evidence of wrongdoing. This delay in disclosure meant the public remained unaware of the family's status as initial persons of interest. allowing the police to build a timeline and cross-check statements without external interference. In the Sullivan case, this method from standard protocol in child disappearances, where statistics show family involvement is common, so investigators start close to home while maintaining a facade of broad searches. For instance, right after the report, the RCMP secured the home as a potential scene, interviewed neighbors for any unusual activity, and analyzed phone records, all while the media focused on the kids' descriptions: Lily with her light brown hair and blue eyes, Jack with blonde hair and hazel eyes, and pleas for tips. The RCMP's strategy extended beyond just the parents to include a wide net of statements from relatives and associates, not limiting efforts to visible search operations. They conducted polygraph examinations on Daniel and Malaya, zeroing in on questions about harming the children or knowing their whereabouts, with Daniel noting he passed his test and Malaya voluntarily participating to clear her name. This wasn't isolated. The police gathered statements from numerous people connected to the family, such as local witnesses who might have seen kids playing outside or noticed vehicles near the property. After a volunteer search on November 15, 2025, organized by the group Please Bring Me Home, where over 100 people scoured rough terrain along the Middle River in Pictou County and found items like a child's t-shirt and blanket, the RCMP didn't just dismiss them. They took the artifacts for analysis while continuing to solicit statements to refine the timeline. Search organizer Jimmy Rivard described the case as strange due to the complete lack of traces after 6 months, but the police used these events to cross-reference accounts, checking for inconsistencies that could point to foul play. According to reports from CBC and Newsweek, this extensive scrutiny aimed to rule out the possibility of family harm, involving not only lie detectors but repeated interviews with community members to verify alibis and movements on the day the kids vanished. The biological father, Cody Sullivan, who wasn't living with them, was also part of this web, though details on his involvement remained sparse in public updates. This comprehensive behind-the-scenes work showed how police prioritize inner probes over outward announcements, ensuring they have solid ground before shifting gears. Community rumors added layers to this, with some online discussions suggesting the RCMP viewed the family as suspects from day one because of complicated history, Cody not being directly involved in daily care, and past family disputes that might have raised red flags. These whispers claimed the quiet checks were designed to sidestep media pressure, much like how Gray portrayed the overall vibe as odd without specifics on notifications. In reality, the RCMP's confirmation came later, stating no criminal links after the polygraphs and statements cleared the household. But the initial silence fueled speculation that they were building a case in the shadows. This mirrors how investigations unfold when evidence is scarce. Police organize visible efforts like the $150,000 reward through Nova Scotia's Unsolved Crimes program to generate tips, while quietly vetting those closest to the victims. For the Sullivans, this meant months of uncertainty for the family, with Malahia and Daniel feeling the weight of unspoken accusations until publicly exonerated. The approach proved effective in maintaining investigative integrity, as rushing public suspicions could have derailed cooperation or led to false narratives. Applying this to Gus Lamont's situation, the conditions align closely with such a covert strategy by the South Australian Police. CPL has treated the September 27, 2025, disappearance as an ongoing missing person case, publicly emphasizing no evidence of foul play, while possibly conducting similar quiet scrutiny of the Lamont family. For example, they've verified family accounts, like Josie being the last to see Gus and grandmother Shannon, noting him playing at 5:00 p.m., only to find him gone by 5:30 p.m. But internal conflicts, such as Father Joshua learning of the vanishing through police rather than relatives, suggest behind-the-scenes checks for inconsistencies. The remote location and lack of traces, described as defying logic by experts due to the flat terrain with no footprints or scent trails, create an ideal setup for discreet probing, not just overt searches like the 3 phases and dam draining, but potential statement gathering from family and associates to eliminate possibilities. Sapol's defense of the family in the shotgun incident, labeling it a misunderstanding despite video evidence, hints at protective measures while they investigate quietly. Much like the RCMP's delay in announcing family clearance, we can infer Sapol might have performed unannounced reviews of the Lamonts without fanfare, focusing on data analysis that's mentioned vaguely in updates, similar to the RCMP waiting months to disclose no criminal ties. The outback setting, with its isolation and minimal witnesses, allows for this. Police can interview locals or review communications without alerting the media, ensuring any polygraph-like tests or repeated questioning remain under wraps. Community suspicions bolster this, with talks of Josie's confrontational behavior in the reporter encounter, the unusual family dynamics, like Gus's long hair raising questions about treatment, and tensions between Joshua and Josie pointing to motives. These elements mirror how the RCMP eyed the Sullivans early due to family history, suggesting Sapol could be doing lie detector checks or statement verifications in secret to avoid tipping their hand. In Gus's case, the shift to recovery mode on October 17, 2025, after failed searches, might mask ongoing family-focused inquiries as they continue to analyze data without specifics, echoing the RCMP's intensive but opaque process. Delving deeper into the Sullivan investigation for context, the case began with a frantic call from Malehia when she couldn't find the kids in their room or yard that May afternoon. The RCMP arrived swiftly, securing the scene and starting interviews, but their suspicion fell on the household almost immediately, given stats on child cases. Daniel described the polygraph as grueling, with questions probing if he harmed the children or knew more. And he passed, helping shift focus elsewhere. Malia's test followed, voluntary to demonstrate cooperation. Beyond them, police canvassed the area, taking statements from neighbors about any odd noises or visitors, building a detailed picture without publicizing the family angle. Belinda Gray's input added emotional weight. She spoke of her estrangement and gut feeling the kids were lost forever, implying she shared details with investigators that fueled their early family focus. Rumors swirled about Cody's absence complicating things, with some claiming the RCMP probed custody issues quietly to avoid leaks. For Gus, the parallels are evident in the family's public portrayal as victims while private checks might occur. The refusal of outside volunteers at Oak Park Station, allowing only official access, could facilitate undisturbed interviews or evidence collection from the home. Experts' views on the illogical vanishing, no signs in open land, align with needing to rule out insider roles through statements, much like the Sullivan timeline reconstruction. If Sapol is mirroring this, they might have already conducted unannounced polygraphs on Josie or Shannon, questioning timelines like the 30-minute window, without alerting the press. Community buzz about Josie's control or the hair dynamic as signs of odd treatment fuels the idea of covert probes, similar to Sullivan family whispers. Extending the Sullivan narrative, by July 2025, the RCMP publicly stated the family wasn't implicated, but this came after exhaustive behind-the-scenes work, including re-interviews to check consistency. The November volunteer search, finding irrelevant items, prompted more statements to verify if anyone recognized them, showing how police weave inquiries into search efforts. Organizer Rivard's strange comment reflected frustration with the info void, but it highlighted the dual-track visible hunts and hidden vetting. In Gus's probe, the dam draining and potential fourth search, based on vague data, could cover similar dual efforts, public recovery while private scrutiny of family alibis. The Mum Yu Thu N with Joshua not being notified directly suggests police have delved into communications, ruling out or confirming involvement quietly. If following Sullivan's model, Sapol might announce family clearance later, after polygraphs or statements eliminate doubts, keeping the process under wraps to maintain integrity. This discreet method protects investigations from contamination, allowing police to observe reactions and gather unfiltered evidence. In Sullivan, it prevented premature accusations. For Gus, it could plane the slow pace toward arrests, with family under the microscope since day one without fanfare. The Outback's isolation aids this, minimizing leaks as police interview associates or review records. Rumors of hidden checks persist, driven by behaviors like the shotgun event, suggesting Sapol is building a case in the shadows, akin to RCMP's approach. The Sullivan family's experience underscores the emotional tolls. Daniel spoke of the pain from direct questions, yet it cleared them. For Lamont's, similar tests might have occurred, focusing on Josie's last sighting or Shannon's timeline to test for deception without public knowledge. This ensures if foul play emerges, evidence is solid. Overall, these cases show how police balance overt actions with covert ones, starting with family as standard procedure. In Gus's remote setting, with no traces defying logic, conditions are ripe for such tactics, potentially including unannounced polygraphs and wide statement collection beyond searches. The current status. Leaving the police investigation aside, let's also look back at the hypotheses at the current time about this case. We start with the wandering off theory, where Gus might have just walked away from the farm on his own and got lost in the outback. From the outset, South Australian police zeroed in on this idea, picturing the 4-year-old toddling off from the sand pile near the family home at Oak Park Station on that late September afternoon in 2025. It made sense at first glance, a curious kid in a wide-open landscape, maybe chasing a shadow or a sound, slipping beyond the fence into the endless scrub. But nearly 2 months later, as of November 1825, this scenario feels increasingly unlikely, stretched thin by the sheer scale of the searches and the unforgiving terrain. The first 3 major operations covered a staggering 470 square kilometers, involving ground teams, aerial sweeps with infrared drones, and even thinning a dam holding 3.2 million liters of water, yet not a single footprint, scrap of clothing, or scent trail turned up. Rescue experts and local volunteers have called it defying logic, pointing to the flat, dusty expanse with few hiding spots, no thick bush, no ravines, just mile after mile of baked earth where a small boy's tracks should scream out under the right conditions. Commissioner Grant Stevens himself noted the slim odds of survival without water, food, or shelter in the outback's brutal heat, especially for a preschooler exposed overnight. That golden window for a lost child, usually the first 24 to 48 hours, slipped by weeks ago. And with no vultures circling or animal disturbances signaling remains, the theory crumbles under its own weight. Private investigator Ken Gamble drove this point home in interviews, stressing that if Gus had wandered, the powdery soil around Yunta would have captured every step like a crime scene sketch. Tiny prints fanning out from the house, maybe veering toward a water source or vehicle noise. But nothing. A 4-year-old lacks the stamina to cover much ground in the fading light, let alone through the pitch-black night that followed, and Gamble contrasted it sharply with a recent American case, where a 2-year-old farm kid got found half a mile into a cornfield after just 45 to 60 minutes, thanks to cries heard by officers and a loyal dog sticking close. Gus. No calls echoing back, no farm dogs trailing him like you'd expect in a normal stray-off scenario. Daily Mail and Now to Love pieces from November 12 hammered this, quoting Gamble on how the absence of those basics turns the outback into a black hole for evidence, making prolonged wandering not just improbable but near impossible without a trace. Indigenous trackers and a former detective echoed the same in the same reports, conceding Gus could theoretically still be hunkered somewhere nearby, perhaps in a shallow scrape or under scrub, but the defying logic label stuck because no clear signs of a toddler's meander, crushed grass, disturbed dirt, emerged despite the manpower poured in. After this long, with temperatures dipping low at night and scorching by day, survival odds hover near zero, shifting the narrative from rescue to recovery without saying it outright. We can't ignore how community whispers have chipped away at this hypothesis too. Early on, it held water as the simplest explanation, no forced entry, no stranger sightings, but as weeks dragged into November, online chatter labeled it sillier. With each empty search wave, a Flinders University expert floated that Gus might have pushed beyond the initial zones, maybe drawn by a distant rumble or instinct. But even that rang hollow without supporting marks, and survival without basics like hydration remained a long shot. Posts from mid-October captured this pivot, with family friends insisting Gus wasn't lingering on the property anymore, dismissing wilder conspiracies but quietly underscoring how far-flung wandering wouldn't square with the blank slate left behind. Cruel hoaxes popped up too, fake sightings of a curly-haired boy in the bush, only to get debunked, fueling frustration that the outback had simply swallowed him whole, a truth harsher than any plot twist. An ex-SES volunteer went on record dismissing bizarre angles, confirming exhaustive sweeps ruled out the farm itself, implying any wandering took him too far too fast for a kid his size. By early November, calls to shelve the cruel speculation grew louder, as the reality of a lone toddler lost in that vastness outstripped fiction in its tragedy. That brings us to the abduction theory, which has gained traction amid the void left by failed searches, pulling in dark links to another vanishing in the same desolate stretch. Plenty of folks now lean toward someone snatching Gus, arguing the clean disappearance, no struggle marks, no cries, screams interference over accident. Even as police stick to their no foul play line, the timing and proximity to Benjamin's case, that 40-year-old who dropped off the map a day on September 26, 2025, with his Hyundai abandoned near Yunta and lone footprints trailing into the scrub, no other vehicles or companions in sight, has folks connecting dots that aren't there yet. Daily Mail on November 1 laid it out. Sinister ideas exploded after a month with zero fresh leads, positing a shared predator or opportunistic grab in the remote highway corridor, though cops insist no direct ties bind the two. The Sun echoed this on November 17, noting how the paired mysteries deepen the Outback's eerie reputation for unexplained gaps, where a child could be lifted quietly amid the isolation. Confirmed reports paint abduction as the go-to for those rejecting the Wander narrative, especially post the scaled-back efforts that yielded nothing but dust. Wikipedia's latest edit on November 8 captured the swell of these sinister theories, with armchair sleuths claiming the lack of evidence points to a deliberate wipe. Someone bundling Gus away before alarms rang, perhaps using the station's maze of sheds as cover. Daily Mail again spotlighted how, after 30-plus days, the void birthed convictions that someone took him as the only fit, noting up against the scrubbed scene. From the script we reviewed, hints of a third-party pull emerge if Wandering flops. Though family quirks take center stage, Benjamin's echo serves as a chilling parallel, a potential coincidence or coordinated snatch, in the same forsaken pocket of South Australia, where traffic is sparse and witnesses scarcer. Community undercurrents amplify this, with mid-October dispatches flagging chilling abduction angles as cops loop back for more outback digs, tying Benjamin's eerie car drop, blue gets with WA plates, footprints vanishing into thorns, to Gus's silent exit like puzzle edges begging a match, evidence or not. Tragic fresh takes surfaced around ADF deployments, speculating military-grade hauls might unearth abduction proof. Maybe a vehicle track missed before linking the duo. Even as warnings flew to curb speculation, the pull persisted. Benjamin's solo steps into nothing, mirroring a hypothetical lift of Gus. Same zone, same shadow of suspicion. Early October alerts to Holth the Rising did little. The shared Yunta void, with its phantom prints and empty roads, kept the abduction fire smoldering. A narrative too neat to ignore in a case screaming for answers. Diving deeper into Benjamin's thread for context sharpens the abduction lens without forcing a fit. Last spotted cruising the Stewart Highway between Glendambo and Pimba around 5 p.m. on the 26th, his car's discovery sparked immediate welfare worries. No distress signals, just those prints fading into scrub, no tire marks suggesting a tow or chase. Theories there range from health episode to deliberate vanish, but proximity to Gus's farm, mere miles off, invites crossover. Could a drifter eyeing the highway have detoured for the boy, or vice versa, a shared wanderer profile in the Outback's grip? Police shut down direct bonds, but the temporal overlap, one day apart, feeds the beast, with November updates from the Sun underscoring how both cases mock logic. Abductions filling the explanatory breach, where nature's cruelty falls short. We've seen how these hypotheses clash and evolve, the wander fading under evidence's glare while abduction thrives on the unexplained. Yet neither fully quells the unease, as the Outback's silence demands more than guesswork. The wandering tale, once hopeful, now borders on denial, with experts like Gamble laying bare its flaws in stark terms. Abduction, meanwhile, casts long shadows via Benjamin's ghost, a reminder that isolation breeds not just lost but lurking threats. As days tick past November 18, these threads weave tighter, each failed sweep tightening the noose on what really claimed Gus Lamont. Let's pivot to a more specific spin on the accident cover-up hypothesis. That Gus wasn't even at the house as Shannon's account claims, and instead met his fate while out herding sheep with Josie and Jess, leading to a frantic concealment. This idea stems from odd discrepancies in the evidence, starting with the lone footprint found in a red dirt area dotted with sheep droppings. That mark stands out as the only trace of Gus, suggesting he was familiar with the livestock zone, perhaps a spot he visited often during farm routines. It hints at him being transported there by vehicle, as the location doesn't align with a toddler wandering from the homestead on foot. If he had been playing on the sand mound near the house as told, you'd expect a mess of print scuffs, digs, trails leading away. Yet nothing showed up there. No churned soil or scattered marks to back the story, making the isolated print feel planted or out of context, far from any play area. The massive gap between the official narrative and the physical clues only widens this suspicion. The family stuck to Gus being at home, messing around on that fresh dirt pile close to the buildings around 5 p.m., with Shannon calling him at 5:30 p.m., to no avail. But that footprint popped up in the herding grounds, not matching the homestead setup at all. If he was truly at the mound, why no footprints, no disturbances, no signs of a kid romping for half an hour in soft earth? The mismatch screams inconsistency, pointing to a crafted tale that shifts focus from the sheep paddocks where real risks lurked. For a 4-year-old like Gus, the pull to tag along with adults makes perfect sense as a trigger for leaving the house. Kids that age crave action, the rumble of vehicles, the bleats of sheep, the bustle of end-of-day chores, over sitting inside with a 1-year-old sibling. With the family wrapping up the day by gathering livestock, it would have been magnetic noise, movement, the chance to help, like the big folks. This behavior fits toddler logic, ditching the quiet for the excitement out in the fields. Who handled the herding? Josie emerges as the one calling the shots, described as the figure who runs the show on the station, directing operations with authority. Jess likely pitched in that day, assisting with the sheep as part of routine duties, putting both in position to bring Gus along, maybe to keep an eye on him or let him join the fun. Timing throws another wrench. Gus vanished at 5:30 p.m. But the family didn't alert police till 8:30 p.m., leaving a 3-hour black hole. That's ample window for ferrying him to the sheep area, an accident unfolding, moving remains, and piecing together the sand mound play. Alibi to steer clear of questions. Real dangers in herding amplify this. Vehicles pose constant threats on farms, where a kid could get hit by a backing ute or truck during roundup. Common incidents causing severe injury or instant death. Sheep rams add lethality. These males turn aggressive, ramming hard enough to break adult bones, let alone crush a small child defenseless against a charge. One impact could prove fatal, especially if unattended for a beat. Why hide it? Farm accidents often spark negligence charges. Legal fallout for caregivers, especially with prior warnings. Josie or Jess might face blame as irresponsible, risking loss of custody for the younger sibling, child services probes, financial hits from suits, or even negligent homicide raps. Concealment dodges all that, preserving the family unit amid scrutiny. Crafting the sand mound story serves a purpose that spots fresh soil, allows faking traces easily, with few witnesses to contradict. It avoids admitting they took Gus out, sidesteps explaining neglect in a hazard zone, and deflects from the herding fields. The solitary footprint raises flags too, hardly representing 30 minutes of play, stuck in sheep dropping dirt, not a play zone. It suggests a drop from a vehicle or hurried placement. Biggest red flag, no traces around the house at all. If Gus was there, footprints should trail everywhere, runs, turns, handprints in sand. Their absence bolsters that he wasn't home during the window, out herding instead when tragedy hit. This setup, with Josie's control and Jess's help, fits a scenario where a routine task turns worse, panic ensues, and the cover story buries the truth deeper than any outback grave. The lesson. As we dig into the lessons from Gus Lamont's disappearance, one key takeaway is the critical need for swift, coordinated searches in remote areas, like the South Australian outback, where time and terrain can turn a missing child case into an enduring mystery. The initial response mobilized massive resources, ground teams, drones, and even military support, but the lack of early traces highlighted how quickly evidence can vanish in harsh environments, teaching us that integrating local trackers and tech from day one could narrow gaps faster. We've seen how family dynamics under scrutiny add layers of complexity, reminding investigators to balance empathy with thorough vetting to public backlash or missed leads. The global grief support networks stepping in show the value of community solidarity, but they also underscore the emotional toll on loved ones, pushing for better mental health resources tied to ongoing probes. Another lesson lies in media's role. While coverage keeps cases alive, unchecked speculation can harm reputations and distract from facts, urging responsible reporting that amplifies calls for tips without fueling harm. From the police side, the commitment to data-driven decisions, like analyzing for a fourth search, illustrates progress in using forensics over guesswork, yet it reveals delays in sharing details that breed distrust, a reminder to prioritize transparency where possible without compromising integrity.